Our next guest is a host on TSN 1260. His show is called The Jason Gregor Show. We'd like to welcome Jason Gregor to the Two Mutts podcast. Gregs, how's it going?
Two Mutts, I'm pretty good.
Yeah. First time ever we got you on, so we finally were able to work it out. So I appreciate you joining in, and you've been a mentor for me over the years, and have put me in the straight lines at times. So I appreciate that. But it's great to have you on.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So how are things going?
Things are good, man. It's good suntanning weather. Say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, exactly. You gotta cover up that dome there so you don't get
Yeah, well, that's true. PF 50 over there. I just wear a hat when I'm outside for
yeah,
that, but
yeah.
got good color now, so I'm
No,
good.
right on. So I guess we'll jump into things. The biggest thing is, you had a great interview with Rick Westhead on your show on Friday. So I hope people have got a chance to listen to that. But the big news right now is what's going on with the Chicago Blackhawks and the allegations that are happening right now. So I just kind of get your thoughts on that. But what do you expect Gary Bettman to say tomorrow? Because we know that before the Stanley Cup playoffs, the final starts, he does his annual press conference. So he's definitely going to be asked about this. So do you think he addresses it? Where do you think things go right from his side of you?
Well, Gary's a lawyer by trade, so I think he will, he will address it from a lawyer's perspective, which might not really appeal to a lot of people. I don't know if they'll get the answers people want to hear from Bettman. Actually, I'd probably be surprised. I think he would, he'll answer it without saying anything. To be honest, say that it's in the hands of the courts right now, and that they'll do an investigation is probably what I think he'll say here. And it's a I, I think it's society now. Sports always used to be the playpen area where you'd kind of want to get away from serious life, and it's kind of funny that sports has become in a lot of ways a place where a lot of change can start. If you look back to, Rudy Gobert kind of got mocked a little bit, but if Rudy Gobert doesn't get COVID, then maybe it's an extra week before things slow down and stop, right? And spread might have been worse. The Black Lives Matter. Lots of athletes, especially in the United States, LeBron James and many others are not afraid to take a stand and demand some change. And change is never going to be instant, because the problem here, this is a societal problem. Number one, it's not an NHL problem, right? Now, what the Chicago Blackhawks did allegedly is horrific if it's true that they allowed a predator to move on to somewhere else without telling people, hey, or just saying, not recommending him at the very least. And I think that's going to be the question for people as to why. And I think it's easy for everybody to get mad and yell and scream and, want people to get fired. Well, that's not really, what? Sure, I guess if you need that, but we need to have the real conversations, because in society on a daily basis, like you look at the RCMP in Alberta right now, their child pornography unit has grown 3 times. Why? Because there's that much of an issue going on. So, that it's a societal problem. Sexual abuse is a societal problem. And the bigger problem is not only sexual abuse and the predators, is that many people, average folks like myself, you guys and others, who when in a situation, if they know something, have chosen not to say anything. Right. And we probably need to, as a society, look within and say, okay, because it's easy to yell and scream and want to blame others and say, oh, you would have done it. But all of the statistics will tell us in minor sports, in at schools, in society every day, there are people who have that feeling in their gut, something's not right here. I don't, that person, hanging out with young children or underage or maybe even adults, and no one says anything. And I think we have to probably have a conversation as to why that is and how can we change it as a society.
Yeah, no, it is a big problem in the world we have, and you're seeing the movement that we've seen with the other things you just talked about, but this problem is still there, and we've had some incidents where with the Theron Fleury and Sheldon Kennedy along the way. We need change, and change needs to happen now. So are you today we also saw some of the other players, Mark Bergevin was asked about it today and he didn't really comment on it too. Are you shocked that other people in management aren't addressing it?
Well, Bergman, and you know what? If Bergman says he wouldn't know, I get, you know what? He wasn't in management. You know, he was in director of player personnel. So at that point, you know, during the playoffs, it depends on the organization. Sometimes they're not around the management. Would he have been in the upper management meetings with the GM, the president, the assistant GM? Probably not, based on my understandings of how a lot of organizations work. Now, would he have heard whispers? I don't know. Um, so it's hard for me to want to blame Mark Bergman because I don't know if he knew. What
Yeah.
we do know for sure is that some people in management directly knew. And this was according to, you know, Rick Westhead's reporting, Katie Strang's reporting, you know, Nick Boynton's on record as saying, hey, we took this and they said they were going to take it to the higher ups. And at that point, Mark Bergevin wouldn't be considered a higher up. So if he didn't know about it, it's plausible, I guess. I don't want to automatically not believe him because
Yeah.
I think there's a chance based on the hierarchy that he might not have known at the time. And let's just say he did. And I'm not saying he did, but hypothetically, if he did, he wasn't the one who gave a glowing resume, a glowing reference, right? When Aldrich moved on, that wouldn't be the director of player personnel, right? It would be your GM or your president, most likely, or some assistant GM or somebody like that. So even on the off chance that he knew of the whisper, I'm not sure he was ever in a position at the hierarchy at that time to be the one who was going to say anything. Now, I know people say, well, somebody has to stand up. Well, again, that goes back to my initial point. It's easy in hindsight to say we'd always do the right thing at that time, but I like to make this example. How many times do people, you know, a simple thing where something's going wrong in their neighborhood and people don't know, right? The next door neighbor, you know, you've got somebody abusing their child next door and you kind of think, but you don't know. Like, I don't know if Mark Bergevin would have known,
Yeah.
but I do know for a fact, according to Nick Boynton and the reporting from TSN and from The Athletic, that there were people that knew about this and then chose not to. So those people, I think you want to ask the question, why did you feel it wasn't necessary, or to number one, stay silent, but then number two, give the glowing reference. That to me is the biggest mistake here that was made, because that allows a predator to move on. And if you look at Graham James and other people in positions of power, the reason they bounce around from country to country in some cases and different coaching organizations is because a lot of people would rather just keep it quiet and push them away and out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And allegedly that's what Chicago did.
Yeah. Do you, if this is proven in court and you know things get to that point, do you see a lot of change happening with the Blackhawks organization with the people that are still there, Greg's?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I'm not a big believer in just cancel culture for everything, right? Sometimes you make a mistake, but this is different than the mistake. This is pretty glaring, of course, if indeed it's proven to be true, if all the allegations are true. So um, sometimes, you know, somebody's probably going to have to, at bare minimum, answer to it, number one, and acknowledge that it occurred and explain what their rationale was at that time. That's probably the easiest thing to do. I would think that you might see some change out of this from some people. I'm not in a position to say who it is,
Yeah.
but if it's proven that it's true, and like when you have Blackhawk players coming on record as saying this happened, it's kind of hard to think that it didn't occur. We just don't know exactly, you know, to what level and you know what, you know, we know that the incidents allegedly occurred. What we don't know is, you know, what was the reference, what was said along the way, and how was this able to just kind of be pushed down the road rather than addressed at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Nick Leddy had some comments today. I know some people kind of said he kind of danced around the question and didn't fully answer it in a way that people may have wanted. But
Well, and you see, Josh, and you bring up a good point there, the way that people wanted,
yeah.
because we all have to remove our own personal bias, because we all have a personal
Yeah.
bias. And when you ask a question, you can't get mad because the answer isn't what you were hoping. Because if you go in with a preconceived notion, and I'm talking, and you can do that in anything, you know, it can be simple things or it can be serious, you know, allegations like this. Like, Nick Leddy was a young player,
Yeah.
right? Basically a rookie. Would he have 50 games under his belt? Like, how, maybe he knew, but what's Nick Leddy and that's, and some people might say, well, he should have stood up. Again, it's very easy to say he should have, but if they went to the people, and Nick Leddy's a rookie, and they have a bunch of veterans and said, okay, you know what, we went to the people in power, they're going to take care of this, you know, rightly or wrongly, he's probably going to, at that point, like what's he going to say realistically? So what could he say now other than, hey, mate, we'd heard rumors about it, but I don't know how in depth it would have gotten to each player in a room. Like there's still 25 guys. It's not like, I'm sure the victims of this weren't going to, stand up in the room and openly talk to everybody about it. Probably not.
Yeah. Broads, do you have anything you want to add to this?
The one thing I think is odd is that you've got like the type A NHL hockey player, and they're letting this happen. Usually in history, it's the coach that's doing it, or to the player. The hierarchy is off in the way it's kind of happened. I find it really odd, and it's absolutely awful. On the other hand, it's awful that nobody did anything about it, or they didn't do enough, and it's disgusting. And I don't know what's going to happen, but it's awful that they allowed another human to go somewhere else and continue on doing.
Well, the thing is, and over the years, I've had many, kind of experts in the sexual assault field, and I think one of the biggest misconceptions we make is that strong people or alpha males or alpha females at times can well, they shouldn't be a victim, right? Well, and again, we know that allegedly he asked to perform oral sex, and then they said beat it. At least that's what I've understood. So if that's all that happened, thankfully for them, because that's different than what could have gone on and what allegedly happened to the high school student and stuff. But I think our whole viewpoint of sexual abuse is we probably have to change our minds to rewire to think anybody can be a victim, and it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter what profession you are, it doesn't matter how old you are. For people that try to start grooming at different levels, they're predators for a reason, and they find certain things that they can prey upon. And I don't know if there's a blueprint for it, but that's probably the one thing in general, because a lot of us would say, well, that should never happen to us, but you don't really know the background and different. And a video coach, people say, well, it's only a video coach, but some would argue and say, well, the video coach might perceive to have a lot of power over players because he could start pulling out a lot of the bad videos to showcase the negatives of a player rather than the positives. So whether that's accurate or not, that could be perceived that way in the eyes of a young player.
Yeah. No, exactly. So we'll see how this develops here. It's moving every day, and more and more people are talking about it now. And you had a great interview with Rick Westhead. We'll share that on our platform too here for people to check that out. So moving on to the Stanley Cup Final, Montreal versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. I want to get your thoughts on a player that pretty well, Greg's, and you've watched a lot, and this is Braden Point. Talk about the progression that he's had since you've watched him with your nephew in Moose Jaw, and where he is at now.
Well, I'll say it right up front. I probably have a little bit of a bias because when I evaluate Braden Point, it's much more than Braden Point, the player. It's Braden Point, the person. So, my nephew went to Moose Jaw. He's 19. Braden Point had just been drafted. He had just, scored 91 points. And when they're youngsters, there was Noah and Brett Howden and quite a few other young players at that time that went into Moose Jaw. And Braden Point couldn't have treated those young players any better. Like, you're 16 and here's Braden Point. He's an all-star in the league, and he was an unbelievable leader and just a person to make those young players feel real welcome. So it doesn't surprise me the success he's had. He's an amazing player, like number one, but he's a really good person, comes from a good family. And, I'm happy for everything he's had. But, you look at Braden Point and just like, I think a lot of people, even when he was only $165 in junior, Braden Point would drop the mitts. He fought guys. He had no fear at any level. He had a high abundance of skill, but man, the guy was ultra competitive, and it's carried on. And you look at it, he like one of the funny stories is his first day of training camp when he turned pro. They said, "Hey, you got to add 2 inches to your stick," because they're like, "You're not going to play in the NHL with a stick that short." He changes his stick, and he's successful. Of course, when Steve Yzerman talks, you're probably going to listen.
Yeah,
and Point. You know what? He worked. I think sometimes it gets overblown that he was a bad skater. You're not a bad skater when you're in the NHL. Did he need to work on some things? Sure. and it helped him, but he put in the work, and his edge work got better. But he thinks the game very well. He's got great skill. To me, he's right now the obvious candidate for the Conn Smythe from Tampa Bay if they win, and it's probably going to be Carey Price if Montreal wins.
Yeah.
I'm not sure either one could win it if their team loses, but Braden Point is what he's done right now. It's amazing. The goals he has and just the big goals that he scores. He's become a huge player on that team. And you look at them right now, they probably have 5 future Hall of Famers on that roster. If we look at Vasilevsky, Hedman, Stamkos, Kucherov, and Point, like I think Braden Point, the way his career started, he's a guy who's projecting to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he definitely is. He definitely is. So, yeah, I know, as you know me, I'm a Leaf fan, so I'm going to try to tie this with Mitch Marner because I know Steve Simmons has gone at Marner and he's posted the contracts and the stats and all that. But is there anything you think Mitch Marner can, get better at by watching Braden Point, Greg's?
Well, they're different players because Braden's more of a goal scorer, right? And Braden's, he's just naturally more I think aggressive, right? And that's not a knock on Mitch Marner at all. Mitch Marner is a better passer, I think, than Braden Point overall. But I know why you're making it, because they're smaller players. And there is a challenge at times, but obviously lots of guys can have success, with skill, especially at forward more than defense on being a little bit smaller. But, Marner's just, I think, like Mitch Marner, I think we're in a day and age now where people want to jump to hot take preconceived conclusions on players and what they're going to be because of what they've done in the first, 4 or 5 seasons of their career. And like, look at another smaller player, Jordan Eberle. His first time in the playoffs in Edmonton, didn't score a goal. He's soft. He's never going to be good in the playoffs. And look what he's done 3 years in a row in New York. He's done what he basically scored at the same goal per game rate in the playoffs that he did in the 10 years of his NHL career, right? So Mitch Marner will figure it out. Yeah. But Mitch Marner is never going to be the goal scorer Braden Point is, because if you look at Mitch Marner's early days of his NHL career, he's more of a playmaker, and that's just what he is. So, he's the good tandem with Matthews, who's one of the best shooters in the game. So I think if anything, Mitch Marner, if he watches Point, is just the attention to detail on every shift, right? Like there's very few shifts that Braden Point takes off offensively or defensively.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. What's your thoughts on this series? Where do you, obviously it looks like, Montreal shocked everyone along the way. I don't know if they can shock, if they got one more shock upset series in them, but they might. You never know. That's why they play the games. But do you like this matchup for Montreal, or, how do you see this series shaking out?
No, they would have been better off to play the Islanders, I believe. I think they would have matched up with the Islanders quite well. 2 very similar type teams. Tampa Bay, like I picked Tampa versus the field at the start, not to brag, just because Tampa Bay, they got 5 potential future Hall of Famers. They got depth all over the place. Like you look at their blue line and just how big and skilled and mobile it is. Like I think Eric Cernak doesn't get enough press on how good he is, and Sergachev, and those guys are in their, like Sergachev in theory is in their third pairing because Jan Ruda can play with Hedman in their first pair at times, and they split up their minutes. There's not a massive gap on their blue line, and like Montreal had the best defense core in the North. But I'll take Tampa Bay 1 through 6 over Montreal. And that's just, to me, Vasilevsky and Price are very even. If you want to call it a soft, the way Carey Price is playing, okay. But then you just look at Tampa Bay's forwards, and I just think there's too much skill. And if Joel Armia is going to be out for any of these games, that's a massive blow, because that Armia, Stahl, Perry line has been excellent for Montreal. So I picked Tampa to start. I'll stick with Tampa. And I actually, we've seen a lot of what I like to call kind of the unexpected runs, right? The Edmonton Oilers in 2006, the Calgary Flames in 2004, the Carolina Hurricanes in 3, the Nashville Predators, and lots of Dallas Stars last year. They can get to the final, but it's rare that they win. And now Montreal is a pretty good team 5-on-5. So maybe can they be the LA Kings? Maybe, but I just think Tampa's too good. So I will take Tampa in 5.
Yeah, and Tampa got the extra day rest. I know Montreal did too, but just Kucherov playing, and that's just, if he's on his level that he normally is, that's just going to be tough for Montreal to match up against. So we'll shift gears to Jordan Martinook. His dad took to Facebook the other day and said that the run in Carolina, that's not the quote, but kind of says that the run in Carolina is over on Facebook. Are you shocked that a the father had kind of said that, and because Martinook seems a very big important player to the Carolina Hurricanes. He wears a letter. Are you shocked that he might be moving on?
Well, I would guess if dad's saying that, dad probably has a good instinct, right?
Yeah.
On a good, I think he got a pretty good inside
Yeah.
scoop
Yeah.
talking to his son.
Yeah.
And Martinook's a good Alberta guy. And I know his father through my brother a little bit. So you know what? Um, it's probably a smart move. Like, you're going to test free agency. It's in a salary cap world, there's lots of changes at different times. And, Martinook will have lots of teams that will look for him because there's a very specific role that he plays, and it's a role that's valuable. And I think teams will value it. It's a role that might get overlooked a bit in the regular season, but in the playoffs, just, those sound veteran players who can, win a key faceoff for you, kill penalties, block shots with their face. Those guys like have value. Look at Corey Perry year after. Now, I'm not comparing Martinook to Perry because he never scored 50 goals, of course, right? But a Martinook, I think, is a player who. Am I surprised? No. When I look at Carolina's salary cap and what they're going to be doing moving forward, and the amount of young players they have in the organization, it doesn't really surprise me that he's moving on. But he'll find a home. I'm kind of curious, like guys like him. Sadly, though, it looks like in the last few years are the ones who get squeezed a little bit financially in free agency, right? Like teams value them, but they don't value them enough to want to pay them their big bucks. Like look at Corey Perry. Like Corey Perry's had a great career, but Corey Perry is signing 1-year deals with teams, even though they know if you get Corey Perry on your team for whatever reason, you're going to have playoff success, but they still don't want to pay him the money that someone argue he's worth, especially in the postseason.
Yeah. One more for me, and then I'll pass it over to Brody. So, do you see Martinook being a fit here in Edmonton? And if he is, what would you say that dollar figure would need to be for him to be a fit here?
Well, Edmonton needs a third line center. I think Martinook's a really good fourth line center. I'm not sure he's a third line center. So I don't know if that fits because I think their Oilers' plan anyway would be to start the season with Ryan McLeod as their fourth line center, have a veteran player with some offensive upside to be your third line center, and then if McLeod by the end of the year is challenging him, well that's what you want. You want the young guys to force their way up the lineup. Good teams don't just gift young guys key roles. It's not how it works. So Martinook, if he was going to sign in Edmonton, it's probably like a 1.3 to 1.5. I would say I'm not sure that's necessarily a fit for them right now, only because I think they're now the thing is there's not a lot of third line centers when it comes to offense, right? So that's the one advantage for Martinook is he's got experience, and it's not like there's a lengthy list of third line centers available. Like obviously we know Danault, if he makes it to free agency, will probably be commanding $5 million, right? And I don't know if Montreal's going to want to let him go, and he might not want to leave after the run they had. But after him, there's not a lot of third line centers that can give you some offensive production, but who can also win key faceoffs and help out on the penalty kill. Because that's what Edmonton needs, a good third line center who's productive 5-on-5, can kill penalties and win faceoffs. Hard to find.
Gregor, I agree with you. I think when I watched the Oilers, their biggest hole, well, not their biggest, one of their holes was I don't even think they had a third line, in my opinion. They had a couple of good lines and then fourth lines, in my opinion. Who do you see as a third line center a fit? Because in my world, I preferably I'd like to see a right shot center. But I've gone down the list. Am I missing anybody? Like who should they be going after that's not going to cost $5 million like Danault?
Well, you know what? I went through it, and I'm not sure I see one in free agency. I think it might be better off. Strud's brought up an interesting name, Jason Strudwick, that is, about Adam Henrique. Now he's got a pretty big cap hit, but you know what? If you could convince Anaheim to retain 50%, and you make some sort of deal, is that a trade that potentially works for Anaheim? And maybe that's a trade that happens more during the season if the Ducks aren't in it. But there's not a lot of legit third line centers that fit the bill. Now, hey, maybe there's somebody out there that can be the Carter Verhaeghe of this season, but even that I think is a challenge, right? I think it might be more of a trade scenario, and there are some names available, or at least that we've heard are available that potentially, like a Dylan Strome potentially, right? Like if you look at making a trade now, the Oilers aren't blessed with an abundance of trade pieces, though. That's their problem. they're still trying to fill holes. They got to fill arguably 3 left wing spots if they don't re-sign Nugent Hopkins. They got to find a third line center. They got to find a second pair left defenseman and potentially a goaltender, depending on what happens with Mike Smith. So they still got a lot of holes to fill. Now, how much of that's going to come internally? Like, I really like Dylan Holloway, but is Dylan? I would rather Dylan Holloway come to camp when I have 3 left wingers that I think can be top 9 wingers. And if he beats one of them out in camp, well, now my team's just better. But if I come into camp thinking Dylan Holloway is one of my top 9 or top 3 left wingers, and then like a lot of players struggles a little bit, now what do I do? Right now I'm chasing my tail. And I think Edmonton can't do that. They can't come in, with a young guy like Ryan McLeod. If I have him as my 4th line center to start, but he plays well enough to become the 3rd, that's a great problem. I can't come into the season with Ryan McLeod as my 3rd line center, because what if he can't do it? Then that's a lot to ask young play. I would rather have a player come in without having to fill a key role and have those expectations and weight on him, because I think in most cases you end up being disappointed.
I agree. I think the good teams have players playing probably below where they should be, not the opposite like the Oilers have done for way too long, sadly. But
yeah.
it
Like
is what it is.
sometimes, in salary cap, there's like the Oilers had no cap space for a while, so I get it. But now they've got some cap space, and having cap space is great as long as you use it properly. And Ken Holland, to his credits, told the truth. Like usually in free agency, if you want to get a good player, you're overpaying. So I'd rather get guys like on short-term deals and show me, like Tyson Barrie was a phenomenal free agent signing, unbelievable value. Now you're not going to get him again for $3.75 million, right? And with Evan Bouchard coming, I see the rationale to say, and I'm not saying Evan Bouchard's ready. Let me make that abundantly clear either. He might be ready to be a top pairing guy, right? Not that Tyson Barrie Tyson Barrie could play in your top pair. He's not a great top pair defensively. We know that, but he brings you a lot of elements. Like look at Tyson Barrie in the 4 playoff games compared to Ethan Bear. How many turnovers did Tyson Barrie have? Very few. He made like the boring play that where he would have tried to risk it in the regular season, because no offense, it's the regular season. And if it haunts you, you're like, guys take more risks. But veterans learn in the playoffs sometimes, this isn't the shift to take the risky play. I'll wait till the next one. And you can't get that without experience.
I've heard you talk in your show lots about buyout options. One, what do you think the Oilers are going to do? And what do you think Ken Holland will do? And what would you do as far as buyout options for the Oilers?
Well, I think they're going to buy out James Neal. I would be surprised if they didn't at this point. I think he will exhaust trade options first, right? Because obviously, even if you retain some salary on James Neal, then you don't have those extra years. I look at it. Tampa Bay did it once. They're the only team in the last 7-8 years to win a cup with a buyout, and they had Matt Carl, right? So can you do it? Technically, yes, you can do it. But, $1.9 million, which is what the dead cap space would be after the next 2 years for James Neal, like that's a really good player to get at the deadline, right? That's a really good player to get. And so it's not ideal, but I can understand why the Oilers will do it, because it frees up $3.8 million right away. I think they would try to trade him, because I'll say I think James Neal will re-sign with the team for $1 million or 1.45, and he'll score you 15 to 18 goals, because that's kind of what he does, right? His cap hits is the biggest detriment to James Neal. I know he's not the fleetest of foot. I don't care. Not everybody on my team has to be a burner to be successful, right? You just don't need that. So like, look at Stahl, look at Perry, look at Maroon. These guys are in the Stanley Cup Finals. They're not winning every foot race, but they know how to win the important battles. But I think they'll buy out him. Buying out Koskinen doesn't make any sense. Really, because then you're going to have another 1.5 million in dead cap space. It's only 1 year. Worst case scenario, you can put him in the minors if you have to, if you think you have 2 better goalies. So I think they'll buy out James Neal. I would probably roll the dice 1 more year on James Neal, but I'm historically opposed to buyouts. So I admit my bias up front.
Yeah.
What are you hearing on Nugent Hopkins and Larson? I personally hope they both come back, but what are you hearing?
Well, I think Adam Larson is definitely a more realistic option, because when you look at the comparisons and what the contract is, it's kind of laid out there. You look at Chris Tanev and you look at all these other D who signed, Brody and other one. No one got more than 4 years, right? So the term seems kind of set, right? 4-year term. And the value, the money, well, TJ Brody has had more offense. So you know what? He doesn't really is a great comparison. So, and he's at the high end at 5 million. Then you got Chris Tanev, who 4.5, but Chris Tanev over the last 3 years played 43% of his time against the elite forwards. And Larson was at 38%, which kind of fits in more with guys like Edmondson and Ben Sherratt and different ones like that. So, Brendan Dillon. So if you look at comparables, a 4-year deal at around 4 million is kind of the going rate for Adam Larson. And that's what I think he'll probably get. Now, maybe a team's willing to go longer than that in free agency, and maybe that's what he's betting on. But I think there's probably more chance of Larson re-signing because for 2 reasons. A, the Oilers have nobody in the system that can play the role that you want Larson to play. I'm not asking Evan Bouchard and Ethan Bear to play all the get more D-zone starts against the top guys. They're not built for that. And then in the system, they have no one else. In free agency, there's really Travis Hamonic, right? And now there is Jamie Alexiak if you want to look for left defenseman, right? There are some options there, but for a pure righty, there just isn't. So whereas there is quite a few left wingers available in free agency, right? You can go Zach Hyman, you can go maybe Gabriel Landeskog. I don't think so, but Thomas Tatar on a short-term deal. Right. There are, but there's no option for Larson. So I think Larson's for sure going to, I think he'll get signed. I think even if the Oilers have to pay a little bit more than they want, I think they'll sign him because they realize that's a big void if they don't have it. As far as Nugent Hopkins goes, the Oilers I know have made offers. I know Nugent Hopkins and Rick Vallette, his agent, have looked at them and they haven't agreed on anything. But my understanding is it's been very cordial in the negotiations, but nothing's reached here yet. So maybe Nugent Hopkins just is looking for a change. I think he'd like longer term, right? And so as it gets closer, because July 18th for me is the important date because that's when Seattle can get into the mix and talk to free agents. And that's when I think if there's a team, no one has more cap space than Seattle. So, they could maybe give you an extra year, right? Now, obviously they can only give those guys 7 years, but maybe they want to go a little bit higher, right? Because Nugent Hopkins, to me, when I look at all the numbers, he's probably 5.75, maybe up to 6 million, right? Some would say, well, hey, look what Brendan Gallagher got. But Brendan Gallagher is an infinitely better 5-on-5 player. Nugent Hopkins' point totals have come on the power play, right? So I would lean now to, I think, the Oilers, they could sign both. But if I had to pick which one I think is more likely, I would say Larson.
And one more question on the Oilers. What are you hearing? And do you think Mr. Klefbom will be back as an Edmonton Oiler? Or do you think he's done?
Well, I'll say this with a lot of certainty. I don't think he'll be ready to start the season. That's best case scenario. Here's the realistic scenarios that unfold here in the next week when Ken Holland talks to Oscar Klefbom, because they had agreed they'd wait till early July. So he's going to call him with 2 options. Option A is, Ken, I'm done. Doctor told me if I play again, which I think is the most realistic option. Okay. That would be if I was putting money on it, I would say that's like my 90% option. Then the other 10% option is, Ken, I feel great. I'm going to try it. I'm going to come back to camp. Because Oscar Klefbom can't tell you he's going to play because he hasn't even been training. He hasn't been able to train like an NHL pro player. There's a lot of strain and stress that goes on your shoulders when you train just to get in shape. Never mind then having to play when guys are hammering you and you're hammering them. So if I had to say it right now, I don't think he's protecting the expansion draft because the uncertainty is just too high. And if he does play for the Oilers, it wouldn't be until later in the season because I just don't see how he could get ready in this short a period of time to be ready to play a season after being off for that long and not training because of his shoulder. But I don't think he'll come back and play. I think Oscar Klefbom, last time when I spoke to Oscar, and he's one of the most genuine players I've ever covered. I'm a big fan of Oscar. He's a genuinely good dude. And when he brought up, with no one really even asked him, saying, I just want to be able to get back to the point that I can lift up my kids. And he doesn't have kids, but he's thinking about having kids in the future. And I know you're a dad, Brody, and Josh, you're an uncle when youth.
Yeah.
Just, that it's a very simplistic thing, but it's really powerful to hold your child in your arms and just, have that. And if you have that much pain in your shoulder because you want to go back and play hockey again, that you couldn't do it, I don't think he'll take that risk. If the doctor tells him, if you play hockey again, you're going to re-injure yourself, I don't think he plays.
Yeah.
And I would bet right now, I'm saying 90% Oscar Klefbom doesn't play.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is kind of trending in that direction. I know you were the first one to break, this news with his injury and what was going on with that. But we hope that he's a big part of the team. They obviously got by without him last year, but with Barry moving on, you're definitely gonna have to fill that hole. And if Bouchard's not ready, they'll have to do something there. But we'll shift gears. Just a few news and notes around the NHL, just kind of quick hitters. What do you think happens with Jake DeBrusk in Boston? Do you think he stays there, or do you think a change of scenery is up his alley here this offseason?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. Jake's been pretty productive in Boston, and I'm always leery. If I was a GM, I would have the conversation. Okay, this was COVID year, right? Jake DeBrusk has pretty much been a 20-goal scorer. Then COVID year comes, and there's you get COVID. Then there's lots of other just mental challenges from it. They had less freedom than we did. And they weren't in the NHL. You weren't even allowed to go to the grocery store, right? They were getting your food ordered into you. So maybe that's part of it. I think it really comes down to, do him and the coach, are they on the same page? Because I've heard at times, the coach maybe, isn't the biggest fan. And that doesn't mean that Jake's a bad player. I think Jake DeBrusk is a good player, but there's a lengthy record of lots of players. And for whatever reason, a coach doesn't like you and doesn't like you is probably too strong of a word, but maybe doesn't appreciate all your skill sets as well as you have. So I would say Jake DeBrusk, like if they re-sign Taylor Hall, which I know Hall would like to play there. If they re-sign Taylor Hall, then I think there's a good chance Jake DeBrusk gets dealt. If they don't sign Hall, then I'd be very surprised if he got dealt, because now that's two left wingers gone.
Yeah, and with Hall, where's your chance there? Like obviously when he went to Buffalo, obviously we seen what happened, but how great he actually worked out with the Bruins. Not a shocker as a guy that you've covered in your career here. And the player he can be, and the fit with him and Krejci just seemed to be really, really well, and a really great fit. Do you see this trending in that direction, or because his agent usually likes to test the free agency, Darren Ferris, but I wonder if it gets to that point.
Well, Taylor's been very, he said, "Hey, I'd like to re-sign here." Right. Like anything, money talks a little bit. I like Taylor Hall's made a lot of money, right? He just made, whatever, even with whatever his salary was $8 million. So we can go through taxes and everything else. But, he's made close to 60 million, right, before tax in his career. So I think he's doing okay financially. And I know he's pretty astute with his money. So I think Taylor Hall is looking for comfort. He's looking for a team, and comfort in the sense of, he's happy to be there. He feels the team's competitive. And I think he looks at Boston and says, hey, they got Pasternak, they got Marchand. Even though Bergeron's a little bit older, he's still really good. You got Charlie McAvoy on the blue line, really good player, right? Swayman's coming up. They might have their goalie of the future. So I think right now, Hall, well, I don't think, I know Hall wants to go to Boston. And I think it's just going to be a matter of, can they get a deal done that works for both sides? I've always said I think he'll sign a 3-year deal in Boston.
Yeah. And Cam Neely came out, and they're looking at getting a left shot defenseman that can move the puck and play with pace. Is that, is Oliver Ekman-Larsson that kind of defenseman that you're looking at, or is there someone else that maybe, they obviously missed Torrey Krug, so I don't know if, I'm not saying they would trade to get him back, but what would you see happening there, for a left shot defenseman in Boston?
Well, hey, Cam Neely can get in line. There's a lot of other teams looking for left defensemen who can move the puck, right? So, yeah, I know Oliver Ekman-Larsson's name's out there. And the interesting thing to me about Oliver Ekman-Larsson was, last year he basically had like 2 teams on his list, right? Now, maybe that's changed. Maybe he looks and he's tired of losing. But my one concern with him a few years ago was that, and this, I can respect loyalty. But then part of me was like, I felt like he just took the comfort of Arizona and didn't really care about being competitive. And that just kind of irked me the wrong way. So I'm a little leery of would this guy come in and is he going to give you everything in crunch time, or is he comfortable just getting by?
Yeah.
Right. That's a question I'd want to ask him. Right. And so you would never get, and maybe he says, you know what? Yeah, I was kind of thinking that way, but now I've had a change of heart, and we're always allowed to change. There's lots of people that evolve and change over time. So I think for sure Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I think he's probably more of a second pair defenseman. But the key is he's not an $8.25 million player right now,
No.
right? So, Arizona's not in a great position. So I think whichever teams are going to acquire him, and there'll be lots that are going to try to grind Arizona to want to retain salary, right? And so that's going to be the key, because if all of a sudden, if you could grind it down even to 5.5 or 6, well, now it's a much different ball game. And even if Oliver Ekman-Larsson doesn't dominate for you, I think there's a pretty good chance he can give you really good value at $6 million.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And two more. Matthew Tkachuk, the rumors, Shane O'Brien was on the NHL satellite radio last week talking about that, and it kind of, made some good internet banter. But do you think that where there's smoke, there's fire with that situation?
I don't, not on Tkachuk. No, not in the conversations. Now, granted, I only had one conversation with one source, but I don't get the sense that Calgary's interested at all in trading Matthew Tkachuk at all. He's another player that, you know what? He had a down year in COVID. And there's lots of players who have down years outside of COVID anyway, and then bounce back. Matthew Tkachuk and how he plays, pretty much what you're going to get all the time. Sure, would you like him maybe not to take as many penalties? Okay, but this past year, I don't think he was as engaged. He's better when he's straddling the line, and every now and then he crosses over the line.
Yeah.
Right. And usually when he crosses over the line, it's not like he crosses over the line and is Nazem Kadri and taking, suspensions at the most important time of the year. Right. He might cross over the line, annoy you, maybe get a 1-game suspension in the regular season. But I think Matthew Tkachuk he's the last guy I would trade of the core forwards in Calgary. Now, it all depends on return, right? If somebody wants to give you full face value in return, I think you can get a lot for him. But I would be surprised if they traded Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah, same here. Definitely seems like it would be the next captain. And if Giordano gets exposed in the expansion draft, and they lose him, does Tkachuk become the next captain, which a lot of people might think too happens. But if we'll finish up on the Vegas Golden Knights, they lose again in the conference final there. Are you shocked that they lost again? And do you think Jack Eichel would be a good fit there? I know that some of the rumors and, some of us fans are talking about it, and you're the expert here. So where do you think things happen with Jack Eichel and the center depth that the Vegas Golden Knights kind of lack?
Well, your definition of expert is obviously a very low bar if you're putting me in it. But I will say this I said at the start of the playoffs, to me, Vegas, I didn't think could win because of their lack of center depth, right? Yeah. They had some good centers, not great centers. And then when, injuries hit, and it made it even worse for them. So they don't have much cap space. So if you're bringing in Jack Eichel, you got to be giving up a lot of cap space going the other way, right? So, is Robin Lehner going to go back to Buffalo, right? And I only mention him because he's got, a big ticket.
Yeah.
And I think they like their goaltending duo. Why wouldn't you? They probably have the best duo in the NHL. So Jack Eichel makes sense for Vegas. I'm not sure how financially they can make it work unless Vegas is going to give up a lot of prospects and, convince Buffalo to retain some salary for the term of the deal. Right. So, but he does make sense for sure for Vegas. I think he almost, Anaheim and LA might have a better chance realistically. I think he makes a lot of sense for the LA Kings. I think the LA Kings, you've got Anze Kopitar, who's still a very good player, but you get Jack Eichel there and, you can go 1-2 and, change them in matchups and different things that, Eichel could learn a lot and benefit from Anze Kopitar. And LA's they got Drew Doughty's still a good defenseman, right? They've got some other good young D coming. Cal Peterson in goal is a good young goaltender. Jonathan Quick has doesn't have any trade protection. So you know what? If you wanted to ship out him, he might not like it, but he has no choice in the matter, right? So you could free up some money there. They've got a lot of young, good prospects, a lot. Yeah. So, and Buffalo is, if you're trading Jack Eichel, you're not getting, close to proven NHL value, maybe one player, but you're not getting, the rest going to be young prospects most likely, right? Or another guy with some cap hit. But man, I think the LA Kings, my only question mark about Jack Eichel is the whole back and the disc issue. Yeah. And the surgery that he wanted. So if he wanted it and Buffalo didn't want him to do it, and that's the reason why he's gone traded. Well, I haven't got any confirmation. I haven't seen Frank Seravalli or anyone mention that he's had the surgery. So If he hasn't had it yet, does that mean he's not getting it now? Have they had a change of mind? Like if whichever team's acquiring Jack, not only is it the cap hit, I think you need to get a direct answer on, what his physical status is, because backs can be very finicky. Now, luckily enough, with the advancements in our medical world, that, a back problem now is much more fixable than it was even 10 years ago. So I would need to know where that's at for any team that's acquiring him. But, Kelly McCrimmon, I think in Vegas, they have really high expectations, and like they fired a coach who did nothing wrong in Gerard Gallant.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you can't rule out Vegas to come in and make some crazy trade that we don't expect, maybe to get Jack Eichel, because they really need a center. There's no question they need a top line center.
Yeah, no, for sure they do. Especially with, kind of the teams that they're playing against out in the West and, in that division too. So we'll see what Seattle does here with adding their center depth in the expansion draft. So we appreciate you coming on, Greg's. You have and you kind of touched on it there. You said Frank's name. You guys have a podcast together. So where can people find that podcast? It's the DFO Rundown Podcast, correct?
Yeah, you can get it at dailyfaceoff.com. We're happy to announce, actually, Frank's the main lead writer there now too. So he's full time there. He'll be in Tampa for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, which is good. Working on his tan probably.
Yeah.
And dailyfaceoff.com is where you can listen to the podcast. And it's been a lot of fun. We'll actually have Katie Strang coming on next, and she's done really, really fantastic job on a lot of the tough stories around not just hockey, but in all of sports when it comes to, sexual abuse. And she would be somebody that, we're going to get her, because she's obviously been reporting directly on the Chicago story. So we'll touch on that with her, and really just, to be a reporter, to cover those stories is emotionally draining, I would think, at times, right? Because you have to hear some pretty graphic details, because she has a great ability to get the victims to trust her, and the survivors too. I should say that. I always like to use the term survivor more than victims, but the survivors to really open up and tell their story to her. It's fascinating how she does it. Yeah,
for sure. So people can check her out. She's a great reporter for sure. So Greg's, thanks again for taking the time to join us on the 2 Months podcast. We wish you all the best and enjoy the rest of your summer here.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me. By the way, is that a Sakic 91, Brody? What is that behind you?
Oh, that's my little kid's. That's my kid's jersey from last year, or 2 years ago in the Brick. He played in the hockey.
Yeah, nice. Oh yeah. Geez, your wife must have been a really good player.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't through me, Yeah. He was actually there today. They were doing tryouts today. He was snapping gates around for the little kids out there. So
nice. Jeez, that's fun. It's like an alumni there. I love it.
That's right. Yeah, 12-year-old alumni.
Awesome. That's a fun tournament. I've covered it many. I've been down there and watched the kids. They get so excited for it. It's great.
Oh, it's awesome. It was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the kids, you could feel the stress today in the parents and the kids of the last day before cut. So
yeah, that's a tough one for those kids at that age. I always tell them, hey, don't worry. There's the list of kids who get cut from the Brick is long and who have great careers and everything. So, but it's tough.
It was just nice to be back in the rink though, watching. There was games, so I had to drop them off, so I stayed and watched. So it was good to see. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's nice. Plus, it's on a day like today, it's nice to be in the rink. It's one of the cool. Yeah, I was in and out. In between, I'd zip out, get warm, go back in, freeze, and then go back out again. It was good.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Well, thanks for having me. Good luck with your pod.
Thanks. Take care. Welcome back to the 2 Months podcast presented by Pete's Concrete. I'm your host, Joshua Marshall, with my other co-host, Clay Vanderham. Vandy, how's it going?
Vandy is hot. I love it, but I'm hot.
Yeah.
And thank God got our AC going in the upstairs, so we're I can stay somewhat cool, but I love it.
Yeah. The weather's good. The weather's good in BC too. So, and we have Brody McIntyre. Broads, how's it going?
Oh, great, buddy. Well, good weekend. Went out to the lake Saturday. Watched the little kids play hockey this morning, and sat outside tonight. Had a steak dinner. Life is good, buddy. Solid weekend.
That's good. And we have back for his second tour of co-hosting. We have Jake Baker. Jake, how's it going?
It's good, boys. It's hot. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Just getting set up to go camping. Like I was just telling you guys, it's nice to be on again and talk. We're down to the final 2 teams, so it's exciting. But I think for us guys on the, looking at the different side of hockey, we're kind of getting excited now. Your Toronto's out, Edmonton's out, our teams are out, but we're trying to get a little bit excited to see what happens, right? We're going to see what trades, what signings, different things. So it might get boring in a month or so, but it's exciting times.
Yeah, no, exactly. So today on the podcast, we have Jason Gregor from TSN 1260, and he also has a podcast with Frank Saravalli. So Greg joined us to do a preview of what's going on, Oilers and some Oiler news, and we touched on some other stuff with the NHL, what's going on, and we'll get into that. And we have also TSN Hockey Insider and co-host of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, Darren Dreger, joined us. So he will, big podcast.
That's a big lineup, boys.
Yeah, so we've got, and obviously Dregs has the news and notes and the rumors and the trades. So with that one, we will hit on all those topics with him. So we'll get to those shortly, but we got to deal with some stuff in the news right now. And the Chicago Blackhawks are in the news right now, fellas, and not for good reasons. And so it's not been pretty good right now. And as the days go on here, more and more journalists and news articles and web TVs and websites and all that stuff and news stations are pretty much covering this story. So we will address it on our podcast, and we will, as you'll hear that we addressed it with our guests too. But we'll throw to you, Vandy, first. Obviously the story is very disturbing. It's tough to talk about, but it's something that needs to be talked about. And as we get more details, they get more and more gruesome, and they're not good. And then, not been good for the Chicago Blackhawks. And obviously we'll find out what Gary Bettman says today, as this will drop on Monday, and he's got his news conference for the Stanley Cup final, which he always does. So, that by the time people listen to this, they might have already heard what Gary had to say. But the NHL's been quiet on this. The Chicago Blackhawks have been quiet on this, but there's been several players speaking up and media members. Vandy, your quick thoughts on
how is this still happening? Like, how are these guys, these fucking creeps, still employed in a sense, they have their dream job, and they're still allowed to do this, or how I don't know. I guess I'm at a loss for words, for one, but I cannot understand how this is happening in this day and age, and why this whistle wasn't blown a long time ago. Because tell me, people knew about this. There's no way shit like this, after what that numbnuts Graham James did, with that story coming out with Sheldon and Theo Fleury and everybody coming out, how this went on so long. And some of the shit that, like, this is almost, it's worse than.
Yeah, well, and it does. It's obviously very disturbing. And, Ryan Whitney addressed it on his podcast, and Brad Ulrich is the guy's name. I
wouldn't even mention his name, man.
Yeah, and I didn't want to, but
I know
people.
To me, I don't. How is this happening?
Yeah, but what Whitney said, he was a creep, and then obviously, Paul Vincent, who is a former police officer who was with the Chicago Blackhawks at the time, got information, went to the right channels, and then still it was kind of pushed aside, swept away. And Mark Bergevin was asked about it today. Nick Leddy was asked about it today, and we also hit on those. We asked Gregor about that too, so Gregor will kind of have his thoughts on it. But more and more people, and Nick Boynton is one of the players that has spoken up. He was on that team. He's the one that spoke up about some stuff. It's allegations right now until proven in court, but as more and more information comes along, there's more things that are disturbing. And the thing that's disturbing to me, and I'm sure you guys agree, is that he did this, and then he got, when he moved on to other places in his life here, in his career, that never got told to anyone. And then he assaulted a 17-year-old kid who is suing, the Blackhawks right now too. So my blood's boiling just talking about it. But Brody, get your thoughts.
I think it's fucked up. I think it's disgusting. And the Blackhawks need to rectify what they did, because to me, it's partly their fault that this poor 17-year-old boy was sexually assaulted, right?
Yeah.
All they had to do, phone the police, say, hey, this fucking guy did this, and this doesn't happen to a 17-year-old boy, right? He's a boy. He's a boy.
Yeah.
Quick phone call. This happened in our organization. Leave it with them. They can take care of the rest.
Yeah. And then,
But they didn't do that.
yeah.
That's on them.
And that is on them. And, it's just that some of those people that are in power still with the Blackhawks today were there when this happened. So Jake, thoughts on that, thoughts on those people, still being with the organization, and maybe what you think might happen going forward here.
Yeah, I think a bit of it is, like you said, I don't know what's all come to light, and there's always going to be more, right? There's going to be more and more and more and more to the story. I don't think it's going to get better. More people come to light, but honestly, I got kids that want to play hockey. It's abuse of power, to be honest. You get in that position, and you talked about, Theron Fleury, all those situations. You watch those, biographies. You think there's no way, you can't do that. There's no way this is going to happen again. Yeah. You build the trust with coaches. And these are, in the Chicago system, adults, and you're still I can't say falling for it. That's the wrong term, but allowing it to happen.
Looking the other way too,
Yeah, it's not even really. It's so hard to say when, I can't, say from the side of any victim to say, like, you allow it to happen. That's the wrong words too. You're caught in the situation. Brutal.
Yeah.
I think it's a black mark on the entire. No, don't worry about Chicago. I think across the board, we dealt, I think it was last year, Babcock and a few situations came up with kind of how treating players. And you and I talk it all the time, when the work situations, how are you going to lead somebody? And don't abuse that power. I mean, no. And power is probably the wrong word. I don't even like to use that. It's the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, people look up to you because you're in that position, and it's sickening.
And he's a coach.
It's abuse of power, 100%.
Yeah, it's sickening. It's sickening to realize people would do that. I'm going to go on a tangent here, but we send our kids to school. We send our kids in systems and trainings, and we trust the people that we send them to, and whether it's hockey coaches or principals and teachers. And where we sit here and wonder, what the hell, man? If it can happen in the NHL, what the hell is happening in our minor league systems? Like,
yeah,
I remember I grew up small town Kitimat, and we ever said some shit like that happens, and maybe you could take this off the podcast, but you tie him to the back of the truck and drag him down a dirt road, and that's what you do. And they'll never find him again, right? So it's not appropriate to probably say that. I'm not threatening anybody here, but it's a fact of the matter. It's a fact of the matter is we don't. I don't know. You look and you try to build trust in a system, whether it's NHL, whether it's minor league. It's shocking. Yeah. That's all I can say. It blows my mind. Yeah.
The Blackhawks protecting a brand. But what I don't understand is if you're protecting a brand or you're protecting something, I mean, to me, coming out and being, one of the first teams to actually come out and say, hey, this is happening and we're on it. This is 11 years ago.
That's the right approach.
We're on it. And you know how much support they would get?
Yeah.
By hiding it now, you've got an avalanche coming. Like it's here. And
and that's the thing is on Thursday, it was, as the week went on, it was more and more traction. And, Rick Westhead, who works for TSN, and I know some people don't like Rick sometimes because he covers the tough stories, but he gets the truth and he asks the tough questions and he gets the good answers that you need. But, he's a great reporter for TSN, and, Katie Strang's been covering this too on the athletic side of it. And Gregor talked about she's going to be on their next podcast. And, Rick Westhead was on Jason Gregor's show on Friday and he talked about it too. So, and then it's just, it's more and more people coming up, and there's more and more stories. There's more and more stuff that happened before he was with the Hawks. There's stuff that happened after he left the Blackhawks organization. So, and so it is very disturbing. I think they have to address it now. They have no choice. And, there's some people are going to have to pay, a tough price here, for what they've done, for, pushing this away and not, dealing with it. And, like Gregor said in our interview with him, he's a video coach. He has to say on maybe what happens with the players, where they go and how they go, and if do they stay with the club, do they move on to a different club, do they go to the minors? Because he might show the other coaches some bad clips of these players that are involved in this incident. So it's not good at all. So we'll see what comes of it. We'll keep on monitoring it.
And here's what pisses me off about this is there's 4 guys here in this on our pod right now that coach hockey, are involved in hockey and responsible for kids and all that. And it's one bad creep that ruins it for everybody else. And
it breaks your trust.
Yeah, because
you
of
don't know where
creeps
to
like
go
that.
from
Now, we work hard to gain trust from parents. Now,
Trust is broken again. Yeah.
Now it's like I'm not saying that parents look at us and they're all, whatever it is, right? But it's just like we're not celebrating the positives that more people are doing. Now we're talking about some weirdo that, like, anyway, whatever.
Yeah. And we needed to talk about it. It sucks, but it's just something that needs to be talked about. And the right people in this position need to step up and do the right thing here and make sure that this doesn't happen again, and it doesn't happen going forward. So it's, and that we're all, and when I say the right people, that's all of us, but that the NHL has got this to deal with. So, and they're on the eve of the Stanley Cup final playing out, and right now that's not the number one topic everyone's talking about right now. Gary Bettman is going to do this press conference, and he's not going to be asked. That's his first question, is not going to be asked about the series. He's not going to be asked about the money that they have been making and haven't been making. He's going to see a lot of questions and hear a lot of questions on this. So, and he's like Gregor said again, I know we keep on teasing what he said in the interview, as people will hear, but he is a lawyer, and he might not say what we all want him to say in here, but they need to do a full investigation. And that's what I'd like to hear Gary Bettman say, that the NHL is doing their own investigation, because as of now, they have not said that. So, we'll see where things go. And we all know that the NHL security is a very serious thing. They don't take things lightly. So moving on to the Stanley Cup final, we'll have some more information on this as it comes out. And, Jake, we got the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Montreal Canadiens. I don't think any of us thought that would happen, but thoughts on this series and where things stand. Who do you think's got the upper edge here?
I don't even know if I'm allowed to predict anymore after the last one. I pretty much predicted it. Listen, put your money wherever I'm predicting against that, right? So,
yeah.
Honestly, I don't like, talent-wise, I think Tampa Bay, you can't really go against them. They've done, we said it last time, it was like, convenient to have that firepower. The last couple of games, I was a little surprised. Islanders kept them at bay. The defensive game held them back, and I was a little surprised that I think it's Killorn and those boys are second, third line.
Yeah.
So they're the ones putting up the points. So I don't know. They're a great line. I think that'll be the difference maker. I think between first and second line Montreal, you get on the second, third line minutes, whatever you call it. I don't even know what you call it anymore, with Montreal playing kind of even minutes across the board. You put up Killorn and Gord, and I think there's they just have the edge in talent. I would say Tampa, again, defending champions, but I don't even know what to think of Montreal. We're all Canadian. I hate to cheer for the Canadians, but at the same time, if that cup comes back into quarantine for Canada, I wouldn't hate that either.
Yeah, no, it's I think, and a lot of their fans obviously would love to see it, and there's some people in the media that just would like to cover a Canadian team winning a Stanley Cup, and us guys here in the media side of it might be pretty cool. And I think it would be pretty sweet if they can get to a full venue, a full crowd, full stadium, and Vandy. Thoughts on you on this series? Obviously, Brendan Gallagher stepping up with some great plays here, some blocking shots, doing his normal thing. He's not getting the goals that he probably would want, but he's stepping up in other ways and setting it up. But thoughts of this matchup going in?
Well, I'm Canadian, but I will not be cheering for the Canadians. I never will cheer for the Canadians, so I will be going for Tampa Bay. Christ, on paper, Tampa Bay walks.
Yeah,
but look, the Canadians and I think just to add to what Jake said, I think the Islanders exposed some holes in Tampa's lineup. Montreal plays that four line, everybody come at you hockey. So does Tampa, but Montreal's got Carey Price. Like Vasilevsky, I think you got a wash there, but I think Carey Price has just got an edge right now. They're hungry. Shea Weber, the D. How healthy is Kucherov? He played that last game, but was he just shot up with cortisone and just kind of going through the motions? I don't know how much he played, but it's tough to say here. Listen, we at the beginning of the year, I think it was Trev and I who picked the Canadians to be the team coming out of the North. They didn't have the regular season, but I think we're seeing what they're capable of. Suzuki's having a run. I mean, that Cole Caulfield can play.
Yeah.
Gallagher, you got that meat and potatoes group, and does Armena not making the trip, does that hurt? Because that shifts lines now, right? So you got a consistent 4-line group going, and then Armena, is that his name? Armia can't make, he's in COVID. So I don't know. But Tampa, I think, is gonna end up winning. It'd be awesome. Patty Maroon, the Hattie.
3 for 3.
That would be wicked. And the party.
I'm a big Maroon fan. I love that guy.
Yeah.
Because you guys have the same kind of barrel, I guess, going on, right? So Fat Pat and Fat Jake, as they like to call him.
Hey, no, we take it easy.
It's summer, bud. He's got the tank top on, sun's out, guns out. Love it.
Yeah,
that's right.
But we'll throw to you, Brody. Get your thoughts on the Montreal defense here, and the play of Carey Price in these playoffs.
Well, we'll start with Carey Price. I believe that he has a hex over these players who look at him and they think, I got an empty net, and then he makes it look like it's like nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that fucks with him. And I think it messes with a lot of NHL players because these guys are the best in the world. And he's making it like each game, you're like, oh my God, that was an unbelievable save. So you rewind it and watch it again. You're like, he made it look like nothing. And then he just gets up. Okay, here you go, ref, puck, move on, next, do it all over again. But I think overall, the goaltending is a wash. Like that text I sent you guys, I copied and pasted from, or I heard it on the TV there. In the last 4 games where they could win the series, Vasilevsky has not given up a goal. He's got a shutout in 4 straight games. Like that's insanity, is it not?
Yeah.
But both goalies are obviously, it's a wash, as Clay said, right? They're both unbelievable. And Montreal's defense, they only play I think they only have 4 of them. I've never seen the other 2 on the ice. Just rolled 4 guys over and over and over. They're all 6'3" at the smallest.
Yeah.
All can skate, and they all can pass, and they all finish every single check.
Yeah.
So it would absolutely suck to play against those 2 guys, or those 4 guys. Like 2 of them at all times just bashing you. They take the puck, they hit it, they pass, they all can skate too, which is huge. They're amazing, all 4 of them collectively. My thoughts.
So stick with you, Brody. Thoughts on what Luke Richardson has done here with Dom Ducharme being in quarantine for the last, I think it's 10 days. He'll be cleared to go game 3 here. But, thoughts on what Luke Richardson's been able to do, running this bench during a tough time right now.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it? Like that's pretty big shoes to be filling all of a sudden. Just wham, here you go. You're in the semifinals, go win. They don't do much from what I see. They roll their 4 lines, they play their 4D. They try to get Danault's line out against the scoring line, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, they're not doing anything crazy, but I mean, it's super impressive. I don't think I've always been of the opinion that every NHL coach is amazing. So the difference is a lot smaller than, if Clay and I are coaching, because clearly we know how that would go.
It'd be a sweep.
Yeah.
We'd win in a sweep.
Yeah. Yeah. I meant against each other, Clay, though. Yeah.
I would win in a sweep.
But I like Barry Trotz makes me think that I'm an idiot for thinking that, because what he did with the Islanders is incredible, right? But back to Richardson, he's been awesome, super calm, super chill. You never see him get excited, just does his thing. I wonder if he has got an ear. Can Deshaun talk to him via an earpiece?
That I don't know. I always what I do know is that he can talk to the team during the intermissions. So there's a live feed from his house to the locker room. So
I'm very impressed with him. Is my answer. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll throw to you, Jake. Same question to you. Thoughts on Luke Richardson here? Doing a hell of a job. And do you think this puts him in a position to be a head coach after the season's done with another organization? Or is it too much of a short sample size? So
it's a small sample size. I think in the NHL nowadays, I think there's so many teams willing to just 20 games in, dump the coach, try a new guy. So it's always a potential. But one thing I can say, in my thought is, isn't it exactly what the Montreal is? Exactly rolling four lines, exactly rolling the head coach out, and rolling the assistant coach in. It's exactly the epitome of what Montreal's been doing. It's next guy steps up, and it right to the coach. I think technology plays a big advantage to that he can sit and talk maybe to the team, and Ducharme has a chance to FaceTime in the locker room what it is. But I think it's literally what people. I hate to use it. We talked about it the other day and some stuff at work. Is it's not buy-in, but it's acceptance of the system. And it doesn't matter if you're assistant coach, defensive, offensive, doesn't matter. They all understand their role, and it doesn't matter who's running the ship at that current time. That's the epitome of business. That's the epitome of what we do. Is you build something that can run itself.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening right now. It doesn't matter who's at the helm. Yeah. It doesn't matter who's at the helm. It's the same system. You watch, and again, Oilers fan, Toronto fan, whatever, we watch these different systems rolling in, rolling out, new coaches, new assistant coaches, new defensive system, but it is exactly what they expect every day.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of people predicted at the start of the season when they started predicting Montreal, and I was a little confused by it, but it's a system they all bought in, and that doesn't matter who's at the helm or who's calling it, right? So Ducharme is a huge, huge part of that, but I think it's great to see the entire team. Doesn't matter your role or how many minutes you play, or if you're head coach or assistant coach. Absolutely, I think they all buy in. Does that get him the next coaching role? I don't know. I think there's something to be said for everybody on the team, not necessarily himself individually.
Yeah. And Vandy, you're often known as Coach Vandy here, so you with the coaching bug and the guy that loves the coaching side of the game. Thoughts on Luke Richardson here?
Well,
I know it's a topic I just wanted to hit on. Like I know.
Yeah, I think Jake hit every nail. It's that staff is just collectively together, and they're. I mean, just because it's a different voice, Dom isn't at the helm. It's Luke Richardson isn't going in there and changing the system. The system's still the same.
Yeah.
It's just coming from a different voice. Or is it? Maybe Dom's still got, with technology and adding, you got Burrows there, he probably, and one thing I would, Burrows probably adds that spark in the room and like, come on. Cause he's only been out of the game for less than 5 years. So,
yeah,
but let's give, get Mark Bergevin deserves he's more happy than most of the guys playing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And just think of how fired up you are. You're Cole Caulfield, you're 21, Suzuki 21 years old, and you got a manager like that doors you and you know that if you were playing with him, he would go through the wall for you. And obviously, as a manager, he's willing to do that. And
Yeah.
you know, kudos to them. They've this isn't by accident. Like the fact that they're playing the underdog role is great, but let's face it, they're, to me at least, they're not an underdog team. On paper, they got a fuck of a squad, man.
Yeah.
Like they got like just, I mean, you got hungry guys and guys that have been there before. You got kids playing well, and you got, you know, arguably the top goalie in the world playing
And Brendan
as,
Gallagher, right, Clay?
well, and Brendan Gallagher, right? You got that
I
mean
think
potatoes.
in order to play the underdog, you all have to buy in regardless. You look at all the Cinderella stories. You watch the movie Moneyball, you know, Astros, things like that. It doesn't happen unless every single person on that team buys in. Assistant coaches, doesn't matter who you are, the ball boy, it doesn't matter. You all have to buy into that in order to maintain it. No, we wouldn't. There's not one of us that would have predicted Montreal, Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah, okay, they're great. They might do okay, but where they are now, no. But across the board, you have to buy in. You have to believe, like they're saying now, believe, right?
Yeah.
You have to get there. You have to believe it. Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
They ain't winning, so who cares? Tampa Bay in 4.
There you go.
All right, and just one more before we throw it to our interviews. Brody, you got a tweet from Jason Gregor. He tweeted this out after our interview with him, but he touched on it in the interview a bit. But you want to read that tweet?
Sit down.
Yeah, I just got to pull it up.
Yeah, no worries.
Prepared, eh? Jeez. He
Yeah.
says, all right, here we go. Pull it up. He says, speaking with a few sources, I sense odds of Oscar Klefbom starting the season are quite low. Surgery went well in regards to being able to do normal everyday things, in brackets, like pick up kids, he said, in brackets. But being able to play in the NHL without doing more damage seems low. Hashtag Oilers.
Yeah.
Damn. That sucks.
So
he's done.
So I'll throw to you, Vandy, first on this. Thoughts on that tweet and the loss that is for the Edmonton Oilers?
That's fucking, we're cursed.
Yeah.
Like, look, we're talking about maybe possibly trading him, getting some assets. If that is now, you just lost your number one defenseman. If that is true, I hope it is not, but and you got nothing for it. Now we're starting from scratch again, a la Chris Pronger 2006.
Yeah, it's brutal, man.
Fuck me. Like, just
not quite that bad, but yeah.
I get it. I know, but it's like, man, like, can we catch a break here?
Yeah. And Jake, your thoughts on that news tonight?
Yeah, I've always kind of been a little bit perplexed on the Klefbom situation. Obviously, he's been injured quite a few times, and I've always found that the Oilers didn't find a replacement for him ever, and it's like they've been searching for the replacement. You know, I don't think they had a huge amount of faith in him staying healthy. I think he's done. I mean, I don't mean to, diminish anything that he's done, but it's hard to say. I'm a golf fan. I watch Tiger Woods and see what happened to him. And I'm going, you don't know what's going on. And I wish Klefbom all good health, and I'm not worried about hockey. Let the guy have a good, healthy life. It has nothing to do with hockey. But on the hockey side of things, how do you replace him? I don't know. Does Nurse step up? I think Barry's out. That's not even an option at this point. I don't think we're going to be able to afford him. But who steps up? What does the team look like? Klefbom's always been a little bit strange for me. Like, the team plays amazing when he's playing good, but he doesn't do anything, amazing in his game. To say it, as nice as I can, he's just a steady player. It's not like he puts up a ridiculous amount of points. It's not like he's a shutdown defenseman. He's just one of those core group guys. So I just don't think they can. Where do you find that guy?
Yeah.
How do you replace him? If he's going to go on, retirement or LTIR, who's out there that you can replace him with? I don't know that. That's a Holland question. But I think they did well this year without him, so that's a plus.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah, exactly. And get the final thoughts from you, Brody. The impact that's going to be for the Oilers going into the summer, and it does give them an extra $4 million to work with for free agency, but or maybe a trade. But if that is the case, no Oscar Klefbom this year, that's a huge hole for the Oilers.
I think it's a big loss. I think he's an integral part of the team. He would have been probably second pairing left defense, and at $4 million, good luck replacing what he did for $4 million. I don't think you can, right? You're getting Chris Russell for $4 million, and that's no disrespect, Chris Russell, right? You're getting a third pairing guy. That's just the going rate. So
Chris Russell's on a 1 year, $1.25 million.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't he go for 1.25?
Yeah. So his 4x4.
Oh, sorry, but he was right. He's $4 million. That's what you're getting paid, right? That's what you're not. My point is, you're not replacing Oscar Klefbom for $4 million. It's going to cost 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Which sucks, right? So it's a huge loss. He played 20. Well, I assume he was playing more before.
26, 27 minutes a night,
right?
As we know, in
maybe
free
he was
agency,
cut down to 22, 23 minutes a night. That's a big hole to fill, and I don't know how they do it. So it's upsetting, but you wish him well. You don't want every guy to have to retire at such a young age.
Yeah.
Except his bank account will be okay. I think he'll be fine financially, but still shitty. Really shitty.
You feel like they've been searching for that answer for the last 2 years, though?
They have. Obviously, they kind of got it with Barry, but that's a lefty to a righty, and I think everyone knew with cap wise, Barry was going to only be here for a 1 year, kind of 1 year deal. We'll see. Maybe this.
Well, does this change the game? Does he now? Do you have to sign Barry now?
Yeah, you might, but it's Then again, are you?
What's Barry going to want?
That's the thing. Is he wanting 6x6? Is he wanting more than that? Obviously, he led Demon in scoring this year, so that's gonna be good.
Yeah, but not to go on a tangent, but with Barry is it's inflated. You played with McDavid and Draisaitl, the two top guys by a mile. Are people really gonna pay him that much money because he played with inflation?
Somebody will.
Yeah.
He might not be the first guy. I think Dougie Hamilton will be ahead of him, but if Dougie Hamilton does a sign and trade and he doesn't hit the open market, then yeah, I think that's that will put Barry higher up on the list. But
I don't mean to be rude, but who did he play for last year? Before this year, last year,
he played for the Leafs, but we all know he went to Toronto.
So how did he do there?
Well, he did good there after Babcock got fired. Decently well.
Oh God!
When he went there,
Babcock.
But Babcock didn't want him. He didn't flourish under Babcock.
Well, I agree.
His first game with Sheldon Keefe as his coach, he scores his first goal as a Leaf. So it's
which took 21 games.
Yeah, it took almost half the season. Or three.
But that's what I'm saying. It was if they're that fragile, do you really want to pay them that money?
Playoffs, Tyson Barrie was nowhere to be found in the playoffs, though.
Agreed.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I thought Tyson Barrie.
No, I'm meaning for the Leafs. I don't for the
Oilers.
Gotcha. For the Leafs, yeah, he was MIA.
Gotcha.
Once he got ran once in Game 5 against Columbus, he was exit stage left, get me the fuck out of here. So
I think you know what? I'm not a GM in the NHL or nothing like that, but between all these high scoring defensemen that play with good offense, you look at Drew Doughty and all these people. What's it worth paying these people? It's not your defense. Yeah.
So we're not going to see that. I don't think for the next 3 or 4 years. I don't think so. We're going to see and we may never see it again. This. Yeah. This COVID might be the only good thing that comes out of it is these crazy contracts don't happen again. So I think that the usual suspects of the McDavids, the Draisaitl's, they're obviously got deals.
People who drive the team.
Yeah, those guys are going to get paid. But we're seeing it in Vancouver right now, where Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, they're not even guaranteed to get those big deals. It might be bridge deals. And we see it a lot. We talked about it with Jason Gregor with Braden Point. He took a bridge deal. Matt Barzell took a bridge deal. So you know,
I'd sign Pedersen to a bridge deal any day.
and he
That
probably
kid's
will.
smart.
I can
Yeah.
see Pedersen probably signing a 2-year deal at
Yeah.
$5 million each, and
It's
maybe
crazy.
Hughes might get something a bit more, but we'll see.
Yeah.
It's
No,
but yeah, that's and you know it is interesting with that move with the CDs going there, because their agent was JP Barry, and JP Barry runs you know, the agency that represents Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes. So we'll definitely, there's probably a definite tie into that. But we'll head to our interviews now with Jason Gregor, followed up with our interview with Darren Dreger. Thanks.